What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another Sunday Scan. I hope that everyone had a great week. We had a nice short holiday week as far as the market's concerned. So Thanksgiving was closed, and then Friday the market was open until 1 p.m. But that didn't mean that there was a shortage of action. We had tons of things moving, and both in the stock market and then also in the crypto markets and the altcoin markets. Just everything's moving. I think a lot of people, especially on the retail side, are very active. So this is a good time to talk about sectors, themes, and a lot of things that are basically moving in the market. So I'll touch on a couple of charts that were in play from the past week. And then later on, we're going to bring on Dawson to go over a bunch of watches about sectors, about themes, and then he and I will go back and forth about a lot of ways to potentially play those themes. So make sure that you stick around for that. So before I get into everything, our Cyber Monday deals are going to be open to Sunday Scan viewers a day early. So make sure that you check out those deals in the description. Click that link and just scan through and just see what we have. We had incredible Black Friday deals and a really good response to that. So our Cyber Monday deals, we added in a couple of extra things, especially around quarterly subscriptions and everything else. So whether someone is interested in just the IU membership or if they want all the education and the courses with it, that's totally up to you. And we have options for everything. So this is the best pricing of the year and it's last call. These deals are not going to be open for much longer. So if you've been on the fence, make sure that you check those out. And I promise you will be happy with your decision. So I'm going to get into a couple of these charts and then later on, we'll go over the main watches with Dawson. So the first chart I really wanted to touch on was this UMAC. So this had, kind of a drone theme to it. And I think last week Elon had a tweet about some different like war jets and basically saying that it's very inefficient to be building these very expensive machines that have to be manned by someone when you could in fact have drones or other things that would be much more effective and cost effective. So that kind of set off the drone sector. And then you had a second catalyst with UMAC because Don Trump Jr. Joined the advisory board. So you had a couple of things come together on a thin name, and that's how you can get those really large parabolic moves. And you can see just a giant move up from, a couple of dollars all the way up to 20. So when you're in a market like this, where you have a lot of retail around and you have things with catalysts that are thin, they can run further than you think. So great opportunities on the long side, and then, making sure not to step in front of them on the short side, but waiting for a proper setup with failed follow through. If they're even names that you want to, mess with, because some of these names that are very thin, they might not be suitable, especially with any size for most people. So UMAC was in play, and you had a couple of other things as well. So SYM, this was a larger name, but they had a delay in filings because they had some accounting irregularities. And, I think the first thing that kind of jumped to everyone's mind was like, is this an SMCI 2.0? And again, we have no idea, whether it's just like a quick fix that has to be restated, because that does happen from time to time, or if it's like we were doing something wrong and now it raises all these red flags and all the auditors, basically get scared and maybe one drops out or something. So SYM, huge move off of that news. And it's good to remember for future times, because if you have a breaking news piece of that, happens during the day, you can really capitalize on some significant, range with that. The next name is Sava. So this had a phase 3 clinical trial that basically failed for their Alzheimer's, product. And so you can see that this had a massive crash all the way back down to basically what the company has in cash. So I think it's 150 million or 180 million, something like that. So falling all the way from a multi-billion-dollar market cap all the way down to that. So it's a good reminder that with bio names, if they're dependent, especially on, one trial or one thing, it's a make or break. And so, a lot of times these things don't come out during market hours, but when they do, you can assume that the moves will be massive. So that was just a stock that was in play from the past week. Arcat, this is, again, another one of like the drone themes. They had partnership news with this stock, PDYN. And you can just see, when you're having these stocks that have catalysts that are having moves and they're moving with other stocks, that is like a theme coming together. And so you have catalysts from some of the things that Elon was saying, and then you're seeing it show up in the stocks. And so, we've had all of these themes could basically run before with UAVS and the drone stocks, but they tend to be much more successful in running for a longer time when you have a hot retail market. And that's when you have people, making money from crypto, making money from altcoins, making money from small caps. And you just have like this huge pool of money growing that retail people have. And then they chase from one sector to the next and it keeps going. This is very similar to like 2021 or 2020, 2021. And then you basically have these sectors run for a long time. They get bid up and then something will change. The market will change. And then basically retail tends to give it all back and those sectors just bleed out. And so if you have done really well on that, make sure that you are taking your profits and doing something intelligent with them and not just, holding and hoping for these things to go higher. But they can be massive and great opportunities on the long side, and then kind of keeping them on watch for those mean reversion and the backside of the moves when they eventually happen. The next name I want to go over was ARQQ. So we've had a bunch of the quantum names running, and we talked about that a lot on Scan last week about, how to build a basket, how to find a theme, find the top 5 or 10 names, look at the ones that have the best fundamentals, the ones that a fund could get into, the things that have options. And so, just having a bunch of names on watch and then seeing what's relatively strong, what's relatively weak. And we'll go over some quantum names later on, so I don't want to get too much into it. And RGTI, the exact same thought process with that was on watch last week with the quantum theme. So again, drones, quantum, crypto, it's just, one sector after another. And that's really a heavily long retail market. That's what you'll get. You'll get these sectors that have some kind of a narrative that, makes sense to it. All these stocks run, they have huge range. And then, people get wrapped up to it. The higher they go, the better they look. And then it's like, okay, actually reality sets in at some point, but don't step in front of that. Don't underestimate it. There's going to be some great gains made on the long side with a lot of these sectors and themes. So that's something to take advantage if you have a playbook for that. And if not, then go in Investors Underground because we do have playbooks for that. GM. So after Trump announced, he's threatening the 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada if they don't secure their border and do a couple of other things, that he would throw on a big tariff on a lot of imports. And so some car companies like GM were getting hit off of that news. So again, more of a breaking news kind of thing, depending on if it was during market hours or after hours, but definitely a lot of range on those. So especially with Trump getting back in office, you are going to have a ton of these types of moves. So it's not necessarily focusing on this particular example, but more when you have tariff news, when you have, different geopolitical headlines come out, you can have a lot of range with that. So it's something to watch out for, especially on low liquidity days. Like you have a Friday, or if you have the market's kind of slow and you have a headline like that hit, you can have some great breaking news trades on that. The next one, Dell, DELL. So this one kind of ran up while SMCI was doing poorly, and then Dell just had earnings, and it wasn't that spectacular. So big gap down on that. So we're coming towards the tail end of the Q3 earnings reporters, and so you're having some big reactions both ways. But just kind of a stock to keep on your radar, as some of the larger AI stocks have unwound a lot, or Nvidia's holding up decently well, but that's one of the few names, and a lot of these other names are just kind of chopping or going sideways or down. QMCO, another quantum name on there. And then those were basically the ones that I wanted to touch on. So before we bring Dawson on, I will give the disclaimer now that neither he nor I are financial advisors, and these are not buy or sell recommendations. This is for informational and educational purposes only. Now let's go talk to Dawson. All right, we're happy to have Dawson back on. Dawson, welcome back to Sunday Scan. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, Chris. How I'm doing? I'm a bit under the weather. Almost didn't make it on time. My nose was running. I had to go catch it. But we're here and ready to go.
Good. Yeah, we appreciate you coming on even when you're feeling a little bit under the weather. And so it's super hot market, a lot of small caps moving. And I know that that's really your domain where you spend a lot of time. So what kind of trends or what kind of sectors are you really seeing in this market? And then, what's your thought process behind it? And then we'll kind of get into some of the main watches around that.
Well, a lot of the times when I'm trying to go long, it's typically secondary legs, like breakouts and stuff, when I like to see some sort of daily structure setting up. And with sectors, when they start moving, they tend to last a lot longer than people expect. And it kind of keeps shorts in there, and they go from one leg to the next. And people start filtering from one name to the next name. So when sectors start popping off, like we just had Bitcoin a week or two ago, we had BTCS, BTCT, all those names, and then small cap traders, you could see the influx in volume and the mass of names that just started moving, where you would get like 100% runner in the morning, maybe a couple of them, and now you had 4 or 5 of them, and sector to sector to sector. So they went from Bitcoin, then they went to quantum, and we had those names: Qubit, QBTS, QMCO, all those kinds of names that are still holding up near their highs at like hundreds of percents of valuations from where they were trading at. And then just running scans, getting prepped for this, we got the aerospace and defense names across that sector. A bunch of names are moving. So that's typically where I like to focus. It gives me a lot more conviction on the long side instead of just trading like overextension, mean reversion type stuff. When I can get some sort of macro idea and sort of let a bigger picture idea start to play out.
Yeah, those are great thoughts. And that's really the type of market that we're in. When you have high retail activity, you basically have a lot of money sloshing around. And the way that retail traders usually think, especially on the long side, is they'll look for a narrative or a theme that's kind of easily understandable. And then they'll basically, run into that one. It'll start to run up, it'll get overextended, and then it'll just kind of pause and digest that move. And then you'll have the next theme start to take off. So that's exactly what you were saying. And so you have all these different themes, like the quantum theme, you have the drone stocks, you have Bitcoin names, and you basically just get one sector, one theme will have a leg up and then consolidate. And so retail will be there for that. And then the next one will start to move and that will have its leg up. And then while the other one's consolidating, that one's running. And then you just kind of rotate between those different sectors that are in play. And one of the things that I like to think about when you have these kind of sector moves, and these can be really good on the long side, good long opportunities. And I know a lot of people like Jack Kellogg and Tim Grittani, they make a lot of their best trades in during these sector moves because it's like the path of least resistance when you just have a big pool of money basically looking for a theme, and then the top 5 stocks in there are just where most of that money flows. And so as long as you're getting in with a decent risk level and the stock or the sector is in play and it's having that leg up, you can usually have a really good risk to reward. And sometimes if the market's really hot, those sectors can just go much further. So it's just a different kind of market now where it's more, what stage are you in? Are you on that leg up, or are you in the consolidation, or are you in a rotation into something else? So, and then when the market changes again, you get into more like the liquidity traps again, or the failed follow throughs and the sector momentum shifting. But it's good to be aware of what's going on in the market and adapt for that. So with that being said, Dawson, what do you really have on watch for the upcoming week?
Yeah, I think I'll start with probably like just some small cap, bigger picture names. IDAI, one of them, I had traded this overextension mean reversion there on Friday. But this one I'm just going to start with because it's kind of outside of the sector basket that I'm really focusing on. But this was overextension, gapping down, holding red for the first time. Red was up there in the 80-cent range. So once we got this morning shove and fail, nice grind back and fizzle into close. So basically the plan on this one for me would be if it starts to fail sub 60, I'd look to join that trend and fade it back to the next volume pocket into the volume profile level down in the 40s, and then possible mean reversion bounce back to the upside. But if this wants to continue to consolidate and keep shorts in there, it's still holding up in its upper band of its daily range that this could have a secondary move. So I'm just going to keep that one on watch. It's not really a main watch for Monday, but given that it is a scan for the week ahead, I think this one is going to have some opportunity in it in the coming days. OPTT, habitual diluter here. If you zoom back on this thing's daily chart, it's a mess. But we've got this recent volume here overhead trading hundreds of millions of shares. And now we've got a speed up and multi-day run up into these levels. This one used to run with names like Sino and Tops and all these kinds of the shipper names. And now it's just kind of moving independently. And I think it could So they've got earnings coming up on the 16th, but they're pre-releasing them, like an early release of earnings on the 2nd, on Monday. Uh, but they also have that defense aspect in their company. So it could be getting picked up with the aerospace and defense stocks, or it could just be running up into earnings and possible sell the news type opportunity. But with this one going from 50 cents up to 50 or 15 cents up to 50 cents with overhead resistance, any sort of gaps I like for a failed follow through and a mean revert back down. So I will be keeping that one on watch. And then MobX, this one's got picked up in the aerospace basket. This one was a semiconductor name, and they recently just acquired a company that does aerospace technology. So kind of weaseled their way into that sector. But you've got RKLB, Rocket Lab. You've got Lunar as like the couple heads, the snakes. DXYZ was with SpaceX, the majority of their holding. And this one, to be honest, when I'm looking for bounces to fail on this thing and it's holding up like this, there's definitely some strength in this sector. So MobX would be my watch for overextension, mean reversion on any sort of days that Rocket Lab and Lunar want to take a break. ACHR, this one's RSI is up near that 88.90. It's starting to get a bit ahead of itself, but this one also in the aerospace, and it's just starting to speed up. If you zoom out to an intradaily, it's getting a bit ahead of itself. If this basket wants to take a break, take a breath, I'm looking to be there on that day. Something similar to like Master, which everyone's gone over in detail, videos everywhere. But when you get this sort of blow off extension, volume starts to pick up, you get that little capitulation day. Where it goes from there, you have no idea. But if this one can continue to speed up and have like a blowout day, I'd look for a sit back there. And then kind of an odd one for me, with this daily chart, you had Bitcoin was still up in that 98, 97,000 range on Friday. And you had the basket fall apart into close with Coin and Mara and those kinds of things. But Coin showing some relative weakness to Bitcoin as a whole. And these higher lows on the daily are starting to fail. So if I can get a prior day low confirm and then the 290s level, I think you could get maybe a day or two pullback, and from there just kind of let it pick its trend. But you can clearly see that it should have gone from here after holding this consolidation higher lows. And now that it's kind of giving it up, I'm going to be looking for 290s to fail, that daily failed fall through momentum setup. So I think that's about it, Chris.
Great. Yeah, a lot of good watches on there. And I like the thought process behind them too. Really just sticking with the themes, the sectors, the aerospace stuff. And I know that Elon had some tweets a week ago or 2 weeks ago about, kind of the old military contracts, like the big planes and things that are very expensive. And, they have to be manned by a person for the most part, how that is a much less desirable than more like the drones or the unmanned things. So I think that was kind of one of the catalysts that kicked off the sector there. And then you had other names like UMAC, which kind of responded to something like that. And then it had other news with Don Trump Jr. in there. So yeah, you've just had a lot of themes with multiple catalysts that are reacting well to that. And it's a different market cycle where you have a lot of these themes and sectors. So I think that you still have a lot of people constantly trying to short them. And that is like, helping to keep them going until they either have a major blow off and, clear everybody out, or if they have some kind of dilution or something. So yeah, a lot of good watches there. And then I'll pull up a couple of my watches for the week ahead. And the first one that I have, again, sticking with these themes, is I'm watching the quantum theme. We went over this a lot last week, and I kind of detailed, when a sector is running, to basically look up the top 5 or 10 names, build your basket, look for the leader, look for the ones that actually have some fundamentals, the ones that have options, the things that some funds or other things can really gravitate towards. And then you have all like the secondary names that just run with it. Anything with quantum in the name is going to go. And then you have some headlines, like some of the bigger FANG stocks are announcing things with quantum computing, and there's been some breakthroughs in the sector and everything else. But it's really no different than any other sector that gets hot. You might have, some merit to it, but in the end, most of these are just vehicles that will not make money for a very long time. But if you only have a certain amount of stocks that are in the sector and you want money that wants exposure to them, it's supply and demand. Demand is flooding in. You have a limited amount of names, and so that supply demand imbalance causes them to go higher. So IONQ, this is a good name, and I've talked about this before. And at Traders for a Cause, Greg Shabika gave a great talk about using trend lines and helping that to basically see what is the normal variance for a trend or for stocks. And so that's something that I've done for a long time as well. And so this is just a great example. And you see this with other names like SMR, other things that are in strong trends. Basically, you have different stages of a trend forming where you have it, much more tight down here and then starts to really open up. And then you can just see the variance is very consistent within this trend. So, you have shorts constantly trying to look for the failed follow through, and it just keeps making higher highs. And, as long as it's holding those higher lows, it's just basically in a channel. And so if someone's long, it's looking for those bottom parts of the channel for entries. Look at these, big flushes down, but still holding trend. And then, basically to take profits or whatever else, it's selling towards the top end of that channel. And so, how long does something like this stay in play? Usually one of two things happen. It either if you were to draw this trend line up here and this trend line down here, it either speeds up and breaks through that trend line. So like this candle would become, super long and basically break out of that. That can be a good sign that a mean reversion trade is coming as it's, legging out of that channel. And then the other thing is that if you have news or if you have something where if this were to really gap down and start to get under these recent lows, it's basically breaking under the bottom edge of that channel. So it either has a blow off top, clears everybody out that's been kind of battling in this range. And that is one way that you can get a mean reversion. Or on like a bigger picture, if you have this start to break down and get under these trend lines, and then that starts to act as resistance instead of support, that is like a macro kind of failed follow through. So IONQ has a catalyst on Tuesday, I believe. It's December 3rd. They have some kind of presentation. So I think that we could have, one of those big blow off candles into that event. So maybe Monday and early Tuesday, it goes parabolic, and then maybe it has a nice sit back for a mean reversion trade. So I'll be looking at options on this one as usual with a lot of these names, as long as they're not, way too expensive. But if I think that I can get 3x on my options, and I expect these to have big moves, then that is something that I would consider for the week ahead. So again, just play around with those trend lines, and I think it'll really help, especially with sector trades. And then just a couple of other names in the quantum space: QUBT, QBTS, ARQQ, and RGTI. We talked about all these last week as well. And basically, just the thought process behind it, identifying the basket. And then, if all these names are kind of moving in conjunction with each other, don't be trying to fight the entire trend. Just look for most of them to start to agree. And that is a much cleaner way to play that. And then the next name I have on watch, SMR, you can see the exact same thought process as IONQ. You can see that channel. You can see where you would put those trend lines. And then you can see, is this rejecting and is this going to start to fail to follow through? Or does this keep consolidating and have that blow off move? So exact same thought process. For me, it's going to be on watch for options. But as long as it's within this trend or within this channel, your friend is to enter towards the bottom and to exit towards the top. Or if you're short, to enter towards the top and exit towards the bottom until that macro trend kind of changes, either by a parabolic or by a big failed follow through. IREN, again, sticking with the themes, this is crypto related. So this had some bullish option flow. And, as Bitcoin is running, I think that if Bitcoin, gets above 100K or anything, you're going to have most of the names run. So this would be one that I'm watching for possible upside. But again, if Bitcoin starts to fail to follow through, or if it gets weak, then this could be one for downside. Again, with all these sector trades, you have range on them. So basically, look for the key driving variables. Is it Bitcoin? Is it headlines? Is it an event? Is it something else? Look for what is moving the sector, and then basically just have a plan for two scenarios. If it has weak opens, but it's holding well, and all those factors are in place, you have a good long trade potentially. And then if it's having a blow off, or the news changes, or the trend changes, you can have a nice mean reversion trade. And then MSTR, you can see Dawson already hit on it, so I won't go over again. We've talked about this one a lot, but basically, huge blow off. You can see, coming out of those trend lines, failing to follow through, and now it's just kind of consolidating. And I think that if Bitcoin starts to rip again, this will consolidate and start to build most likely. But if Bitcoin stays weak, then this can just consolidate for a couple of weeks, in my opinion. So those are really the names that I want to go over. Dawson, do you have any thoughts on either the quantum space, the crypto names, or anything in addition to what I talked about?
Yeah, I noticed you said to keep track of kind of the head of the snake and what they're moving off of. And typically, where I excel on those names is when they start to disconnect and you get that outlier range when they're not trading in lockstep with the thing that's driving them. Like when Master starts pulling back as Bitcoin is still consolidating and holding near highs on that big pullback day. That was why it had such outlier move. So if you get one of these bigger names that's driving it, and then you get some of these smaller cap names that are moving in sympathy to it, and they start to disconnect in either relative weakness or start to speed up with relative strength, then I think that's where I like to focus and where my edge starts to come in. And I'm typically like a price action guy. Like I know before we hopped on here, I was running scans and I had mentioned I was noticing all the aerospace things. And my first question to you was, is there anything macro or any headlines or something? Because I don't typically follow that kind of stuff, but I try to find the name with the biggest market cap, something that's moving the most steadily, and then trade small caps off of that. So when we're looking at Rocket Lab and Lunar and trading names off of that, when you're looking at IO and Q and trading quantum names like Qubit off of that, I think that's where my thoughts are, and I let you guys like you that do a lot better in the macro space to let me know what's going on.
Yeah, and it's nice, and it's good to blend styles because you're going to pick up things, and you're going to have price alerts that I don't have, and then I'll have some different thoughts about like the sectors or for the driving variables that you might not be focused on. So I think that's one of the beautiful things about Investors Underground is that you have a lot of different traders, all different styles, basically looking at the same thing from different angles. And it's not a competitive thing; it's a collaborative thing where it's I want you to do well, you want me to do well, and we can both do better if we're sharing our ideas and just kind of working on that. And that's really the whole ethos of the room and everything. It's just a bunch of people working together to basically beat the market. So I already touched on this earlier on in Scan, but we are running our Cyber Monday deals, and I think they are the only thing sicker than Dawson right now. Really good deals. But again, if you've been considering Investors Underground or joining a room, it is the best time of the year. These deals are not going to last much longer. They end this week, and so it's last call. So if you've been interested in it, if you've been on the fence, look at these deals. Click the link in the description to look at them. We have quarterly deals that are new, and we have just a whole bunch of different packages. If people either want just the membership or if they want the courses and the education included with it, but you're not going to find better deals than what we have running right now. So especially with New Year's coming up and, everyone's making their resolutions and you have a lot of traders who are trying to make changes to what they've been doing to help to better their trading. So, get ahead of that and actually make a change that will, impact your life in a positive way. So check out our Cyber Monday deals and you can trade alongside myself and Dawson and a lot of other traders in the room and using the best technology that we can basically customize to fit what our trading style is. And then we can all share it. So Dawson, I really appreciate you jumping on Scan, especially when you're not feeling well, but I'm looking forward to trading with you in the week ahead. And I hope that you feel better.
Thanks, buddy. See ya.
See you.